MG Rob back with you, and today we're working on the 1946 MG S-Type Special. We're going to get into this thing, get it up in the air, find out what exactly happened, what's wrong with it, and see what it's going to take to actually fix it. Let's get going. All right, so if you saw the introduction to this car, my last video, you'll know what happened was he backed it off a trailer in a field with uneven ground and caught the master cylinder on, I'm guessing, the hinge for the door on the enclosed trailer here. So let's see what we got here. Well, he's already taken the cover off and it was all bent, and he actually straightened that himself before bringing it over here, and it's actually looking pretty good right now. We can see here, obviously this got caught right here, and with the wetness here, I'm going to say that's probably leaking there, and this is going to want a new line here. But as far as the master cylinder itself is concerned, I was actually expecting from the description of what happened and everything that we was going to see some actual physical damage on the can here. And right now, it doesn't look too bad. What I'm going to have to do is go ahead and take this off, get it on the workbench and take a good hard look at it. Maybe this got actually spared and all the real problem was just the cover, the boot, and the line. So I don't know quite if they've actually messed with any of this stuff other than that cover or not. You know, did they actually loosen anything else before bringing it to me? I'm not sure. But I did notice that a lot of this stuff wasn't as tight as I would like to have seen it. And maybe it was just tight enough that with bumping it, it started really leaking, and we're not into as much of a problem as they feared that we were getting into, which is good for them. So, but I still would definitely want to replace that. But yeah, I just have to look at the master cylinder. It's not actually empty completely. So I'll take a quick look at it, make sure everything looks good inside. And it might just be as simple as a new line here, and I might go ahead and put a new kit in the master cylinder just for good measure, and we might be back on the road with a pretty simple fix here. All right, so now I've ordered the kit for the master cylinder. Now all we really need is just this boot here, because that's the only thing that actually got damaged. But since we do have the whole kit, I might as well go ahead and put all new seals in the master cylinder. And the other thing is I made up the brake line. Now this is the brake line that came off of it. Now some things to note on this brake line, that this is actually a copper line. And it's not advisable to use copper, though it is common to find on some of these older cars like the TC, the replacement lines, people used to use copper on them. Now when he built this car, he reused the lines that were already on it because they looked good to him. But like I said, they're copper, not ideal. And the other problem with these lines is the ends here, which I've already cut them off. I drilled the ends off of it because I reused the fittings. They were only single flare. That you don't want either. Now, you can see right here where it was bent here, right in this area, so I wouldn't want to trust that under any kind of panic stopping. So we got this is the new brake line. I said I reused the fittings because it seems that the fittings are a bit difficult to find the exact right fittings because of the particular thread size these are, and the fact that they're extended like this, like the metric fittings are. That's not a super common fitting to find. You know, your local parts stores aren't going to have it. You got to get it online. It's more of a specialty thing anymore. And you can't just buy one of these lines. You got to buy the whole kit for the car. So I just decided to go ahead and make my own. Now this is cupro nickel line. So it's not copper. It is a steel line with extra copper in it to make it more malleable so it's easier to bend, but also has more nickel in it to give it more strength back, the strength back that it loses with the extra copper. So this just needs to be bent and it can be put into the car. So back to the car, the other issue that we had when it showed up here was it was leaking water out of the side of the cylinder head. And I don't know if you can see it real well, but right there, it was leaking from right there. Now there's this crusty formation here where it looks like it might have been, at one time maybe it was weeping and they put some sort of a sealer in there, but now it's doing way more than weeping. It's actually a pretty good leak. And he has since told me to go ahead and address the problem. So we think it's the actual head gasket that's the problem. So off with its head. All right, now that we got the cylinder head off, we need to look at it to see if we can see the evidence of where it was leaking. Now we look at the cylinder head gasket, would go on this way. It would have been coming out this corner here. And this would be the closest water jacket right here. So what we'll be looking for is, because this is a car that sits a lot, is if it's corroded out across here where you can see where there's any water had been getting through there, and we're not seeing anything on either side. Now one thing that is somewhat concerning to me is, let's see how dark this is. Like maybe like cylinder head gasket wasn't sealed as well as it should have been, and some of the compression was getting past the rings here and getting a little bit of carbon up in there. So we do know that he said that the head was reconditioned, but he straight edged the block and didn't have it skimmed when he built it. So we might have just an overall sealing issue. You can even see it here too. Looking at the cylinder head, you can see a lot of darkness here too, but when we're looking here, we don't see any evidence of like water or coolant coming across there. So we look at here, I think, well, it was coming out this corner. Now this has had a big bunch of buildup here, and I flaked some of the paint away here. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna wire brush the corner here and make sure, see if we can see anything. We might have to have this crack check just to make sure it didn't develop a crack in here somewhere. But the other thing I wanna look at is thermostat housing, because this would have been bolted here. It may have been coming out to here and just running down the edge there and just coming out there rather than going straight down. So we look at the gasket here and we don't actually see any obvious evidence. And this is the worst. When you don't see any obvious evidence of anything, then you can't point your finger directly at one thing that is exactly the problem. So then you gotta do your due diligence on everything and check everything to make sure. So I'll try to carefully scrape this off and see what the backside looks like. And what we'll do is we'll flat plate this, make sure this is nice and flat and there's no warpage in the housing here. I'll check this here, make sure there's no warpage here. And we'll clean this off, straight edge this and the block. And then we'll try to determine which one actually was the culprit. All right, so I put this on the flat plate real quick just to kind of see, and you can see like across the bottom here, it's not too great, but that's enough that the gasket should be able to take up that. But coolant could be coming out, seeping out, and going down across here, but the paint here didn't show that. And the other thing we got is I just hit this real quick, and we see it's low here, 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 and here, so this could use a little bit of flattening as well. But like I said, the paint wasn't showing anything here. Everything the paint was showing was up in here. The paint was off this corner. Now I'm looking here, and right, well, I don't have a, but right there, from this view, almost like there could potentially be a little bit of a flaw in the casting or a little small crack. So we might have to have this thing crack checked just to make sure of what that is. So those of you with a sharp eye might notice that that little flaw in the casting that we were pointing out was right with the stud hole in the casting. So you might say, well, that probably is not going to be the leak. And you know, it might not be the leak. But I went ahead and sent that up to the machine shop. They're going to mag it, pressure test it, and then if it passes those tests, then they're going to go ahead and check it for flatness and do a light skim on it. But meanwhile, the owner of the car has a spare cylinder head that they're dropping off to me just in case. Now I've go ahead and ordered a head gasket set for it and the other little gaskets we're going to need to be able to do this. And once we find out what's going on with the cylinder head, then we'll continue on.